We'd like to get started. We have a long evening, and we'd like to get a head start. No? Closer. Could everybody please find a seat? Okay. Thank you, and hello. Don't be fooled by the rain. I just want to give you an overview of the evening. I'm Susan Wengraff. I represent District 6. And for me, fire safety is one of my top priorities. We have a wonderful program for you tonight. We have people from neighboring jurisdictions and institutions who are going to tell you about what they are doing to mitigate the threat of wildfire. And then we have our own fire chief who is going to walk you through some new and innovative programs that we're launching. So I want to introduce my colleagues to you who are co-hosting tonight. Lori Drosty, who represents District 8.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to take this moment and thank Councilmember Susan Wengraff for always putting on an amazing fire safety forum every year. And I want to also acknowledge my fellow elected officials who are here this evening. I look forward to hearing your questions, and we're going to be presented with a lot of terrific information tonight. So we'll make sure to have our aides take notes. If you have any questions, we can follow up with answers if they don't get answered tonight.
Okay, I forgot to mention, we have with us tonight representatives of several organizations that are working on various aspects of fire safety. We have Berkeley Citizens for Utility Undergrounding. They are in the back over there, Nancy Rada and Terry Mandel. They have a table with a sign-up. Get on their email list. They have an incredibly informative website. And I urge you, if during the meeting, to just get up and go over there and sign up. We also have the Berkeley Path Wanderers here. And as they are on this side of the room, and as you know, the pathways are a very important part of our evacuation strategy. Everybody should own a map of the pathways in Berkeley, and you should familiarize yourself with the paths that are closest to your home. We also have with us Sue Piper from the Oakland Fire Safe Council in the back. And Sue has some very interesting information about insurance and what's going on with the insurance company and wildfires in the state. And so if you have an opportunity, pick up some of the information and talk to Sue. Okay, now I'd like to introduce Councilmember Sophie Hahn. Oh wait, I forgot. Also, another thing, really important. You can sign up for AC Alert here tonight. AC Alert is probably the single most important notification system that we have in the county. There's a table in the back, and you can sign up on our computers. They will help you sign up. This way you will be able to get notifications about various conditions that are going on. It's an alert system. It can come on your landline, on your cell phone, on your computer. I even see them on my TV somehow. But it's really important to do that. So please sign up for AC Alert now, finally. Councilmember.
Oh, good evening. Thank you all for coming out, and welcome to District 5. I also want to thank Councilmember Wengraf and her staff for putting together this amazing event. My comment for tonight is just, and I will implore each of you, this is the year to really do something. We all have seen the tragic results of even good planning is not enough. We have to really do excellent planning. So we're going to learn a lot tonight, and it's never the right day to, clean out your garage or put that preparedness kit or sit down at the kitchen table and actually write a list of the things that you might like to take with you if you need to leave in a hurry. But this year, you really have to put that time aside and do it. So I look forward to learning more about this and how we can help keep each other safe and also how we can each keep ourselves safe. So thank you, Susan. And shall I introduce the next speaker? Yes. Okay. So, and next up is your mayor, Jesse Areguin.
Well, first I want to thank Councilmember Wengraf for her leadership in addressing the issue of fire safety. She has made this a top priority. It's not only an issue important to her district, it's a citywide issue. I was informed that there are 25,000 residents that live in the high fire zone. And as we know, in 1923, the fire spread not just from the hills, but citywide. So it's important that we take steps with vegetation management, through undergrounding of utilities, through education, through safe evacuation routes, to be prepared as a community. I want to recognize former Mayor Shirley Dean is in the audience. She's on the Disaster and Fire Safety Commission. And we know that Berkeley is no stranger to devastating wildfires. Certainly we've seen devastating wildfires in California, in Southern California, Northern California, and we know that these fires are going to continue with the increasing risks of climate change. But we know in our own community in 1923 and 1991 that the risk of urban wildfire is real. Governor Newsom was in Berkeley about a month ago to talk about the state's increasing investment in addressing the issue of urban wildfire, and I was proud to be joined by my colleagues on the city council and expressing our support for the state's investment. But there are things that we need to do locally, not just in our daily lives, but as a local government to make this issue a high priority. And in my budget recommendations and the budget that we passed in November, we set aside over $500,000 in funding for increased resources for vegetation management, education, and programs to address the increasing risk of wildfire, and we need to continue that investment and that commitment to address the issue. So I just want to reiterate my strong commitment and the commitment of the city council to taking this issue very seriously. It is a matter of life and death, and it affects everyone in our community, not just the people in the hills, but also the people in the flats. I want to thank you for being here, for your interest in this issue, and together we need to work to keep our community safe. So thank you very much. And am I introducing Assemblymember Wicks? So it's my pleasure to introduce our State Assembly Member, Buffy Wicks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I will say, the first meeting I ever had with Susan Wengraf, we were at, where did we have breakfast again? It was at Saul's. That's right, of course, classically, Saul's, right? And I said, I'm thinking of running for this seat, and, my name's Buffy, it's my real name, ha, 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 right? That's the joke. And she said, I care about fire. Literally, it was the first thing, that came out of her mouth was, what are we going to do to protect the hills? What are we going to do to make sure we have, traffic flow if, God forbid something happens again that happened in 1991? How are we protecting our citizens? How are we thinking about this every single day? And it was literally the first thing that she said to me and continues to be the thing that she talks to me about. And having been in office now for, 5 or 6 months, the first meeting we had when I was then elected was, what are you going to do about fire? So you have a great representative here. And really a great team of leaders here in Berkeley, all the folks here and others who really care desperately and deeply about this issue. And I know that concern is driven because of the real experiences that many of you in this room have felt. And I think what had happened, in California up until recently was we felt like a little immune to this, right? And then North Bay happened, and Paradise happened. And all these other things started happening, and I think it came right back to us with an immediacy that I know you all have felt every single day since 1991. So I know that you guys never stopped thinking about it. She hasn't stopped thinking about it. These guys haven't stopped thinking about it. And now, as your elected official in Sacramento, I think about it every single day. And it is one of the issues that in my new role, I've had many conversations with the folks up here and others in Oakland, in El Cerrito, and other parts of my district about this issue. And I have to say, you know, fire knows no borders. Fire doesn't know the difference between Oakland and Berkeley, you know, or El Cerrito. And so we have to make sure that we're approaching this holistically, that we're all working collaboratively together at the city, at the county, at the state level. And I have to say, it really is a top priority for our governor. It is a top priority for him. And it's a priority for me. You know, I grew up in the Sierra Nevada foothills, and my dad was a firefighter for 35 years for the U.S. Forest Service. And he used to fight wildfires. In fact, he still does to this day because, you know, we don't have a 3-month, 4-month fire season anymore. We have a 12-month fire season. So he gets pulled out of retirement to fight wildfires because of the dangers, because of the climate change issues, because of the challenges with PG&E and the issues that we're faced with. So this is an issue that really hits home to me as well, having been raised by a firefighter, and something that I care deeply about. But you know, I just want to let you know, up at the state level in Sacramento, we're having a lot of conversations around this. Governor Newsom, who was here recently, who the mayor just referenced, has put a lot of time, energy, attention, and political weight into, both in terms of how we deal with PG&E and how we ensure that we're creating infrastructure that keeps us safe. And I have some bills to that effect as well. But also how we're equipping CAL FIRE and the folks who are on the front lines of fighting this to really be effective. You know, he established 35 priority projects of areas of the state where we know that we need to do investments, that we have to reduce our fuel load. There was one right here, and I know CAL FIRE is here, I believe, right, to talk about that. Is that right? Yeah. So the North Orinda fuel break, the 14-mile fuel break that's here in the area in Wildcat Canyon, that's a 17-acre project. And will protect about 500,000 residents. So the idea is that we can kind of clear those spaces to make sure that here, right close at home, we're doing everything we can to mitigate against this. You know, within the governor's budget as well, he laid out 14 additional year-round fire engines with 131 new staff to make sure that we're equipped to deal with the issues at hand. The other thing that we're doing at the legislative level, and I'm a co-author of this bill, Assemblymember Jim Wood, who is in the wine country area, has a bill that I'm co-authoring that establishes a state wildfire preparedness board, a statewide board, but also as part of that is a regional planning component. So that we're all working, again, collaboratively. Again, fire knows no boundaries. It knows no borders. So there's a lot of stuff happening at the state that includes really us putting our money where our mouth is in fire preparedness. So just know that we're doing everything we can on our end. You have great elected officials here who are pushing on their end. And we want to make sure that you are safe. And God forbid if something happens, it's on us. You know, and we know that. And that's what I think about when I go to bed at night. So we're fighting for you guys up in Sacramento. You got great folks here. And thank you very much for being here. Very much appreciated.
Okay, before we go any further, I want to give a big shout out to my legislative aide, Lori McWhorter, who pulled this whole event together. She's in the back, and wave to the crowd. Thank you, Lori. So the order of the evening. We're going to first hear from Chief Winokur from Orinda Moraga. Then we'll hear from Devin Woolridge from UC Berkeley. Then we'll hear from Aileen Taylor from East Bay Regional Parks. And then from our own fire chief, Dave Brannigan. When you arrived, there were some things on your seat. We have cards and pencils for questions, and there was also an evacuation checklist. Please take that evacuation checklist home and go over it. And educate yourself about the things that you have to do to be safe. So with that, we'll start with Chief Winokur.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to Chief Brannigan and the City of Berkeley for inviting me here. I'm a native of Berkeley and a proud Yellow Jacket. Grew up just down the street, so being back in town is always fun, and good to be back among my people. So what we're going to do, as Ira Glass likes to say, in 3 chapters, we're going to walk through what we've been working on in the Moraga-Orinda Fire District, which, while Moraga and Orinda may seem very far away, as soon as you cross over the hill into Tilden, you're in the jurisdiction of my fire department because you're in Contra Costa County. As I like to say with Dave Brannigan, if Tilden is really part of Berkeley, he's welcome to run the medical calls up there. We'll trade anytime. So first we'll talk about the external fuels mitigation project. This specifically is the North Orinda shaded fuel break. And if I may just, the words have meaning. It's being called a fire break here and there, and it's not a fire break, it's a fuel break, and I'll walk through why that's different. So to orient you to the threat, we're down here in the bottom left where all that red is and the 2 large bodies of water. So the fire we are worried about in this area is a Diablo wind-driven fire in the fall. So this is defined by not necessarily hot, but very dry winds coming out of the north and the northeast during October and November. And these are not a new phenomenon. They've always occurred in California. But what is new is that as a result of the advent of climate change, the onset of those seasonal winds is preceding the onset of the rainy season on a regular basis. This used to be an irregular and infrequent event, meaning that our exposure to those very risky conditions did not occur on a regular basis. Now it is an annual event. So if you walk with me here that the threat comes from a north and northeast wind, that means that the large wilderness, undeveloped lands of Briones, the San Pablo Dam Reservoir, and the San Pablo Watershed, Wildcat Canyon, all of those lands are the area that we're worried about a fire coming from. In this area, this is the fire history for the East Bay Hills. There's Highway 24 to orient you to the problem. The green in the bottom is the 1991 tunnel fire that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. The blue up top, the 1923 Berkeley Hills fire that burned right down to the intersections just past this church, as well as the 1905 fire and then the 1970 fish fire in the Berkeley Hills. All of those occurred during Diablo wind events in the fall. All of them resulted in significant both loss of life and loss of property. Those are the conditions that we're worried about, and we're attempting to reduce the exposure to through this project. To quantify how we came up with where the project should be and what measures should be used, we worked with the folks at UC Berkeley who used some very sophisticated fuel modeling and then fire modeling to show what the spread would look like under certain conditions. So we see here, this is the intersection of Happy Valley and Bear Creek Road in North Orinda. And the little star on the top right is where they modeled the fire start point. And those color spreads, those represent 1 hour advances of the fire. And so what we see under these conditions, which is a dry Diablo wind event, that at about 4 hours of burning, most of North Orinda has been consumed by fire, and the limited evacuation routes have been compromised, meaning the people who have not gotten out yet will not be able to get out. And more to follow on that later. The next thing they did is using 30-centimeter LiDAR, they went down both sides of Bear Creek Road and they made recommendations for the mitigation of annual grasses through mowing, the mastication of shrub and brush through mechanical meads, and the trimming and limbing of the understory of trees where lower branches were communicating directly with ground fuels. Armed with that information, they then reran the model, having updated the fuels for the removal of these recommended species. And what the model showed with the rerun is the fire does not jump the road. And so what this then becomes is a fire, and we're very concerned about any fire, but this is a fire that burns up some grassland, and some cows have got to move very quickly, and we put it out, and the next year it regrows, and you would never know there had been a fire there. This fire looks absolutely nothing like this fire, with approximately 1,500 homes destroyed and untold loss of life and other property. So what we're trying to do is set the conditions that a future fire coming out of the wilderness areas north of and east of the populated areas in the East Bay will be this fire and not the first one. So as an example, East Bay Mud on an annual basis does fuel mitigation work. And so this is an overlay of East Bay Mud's fuel mitigation work along North Orinda last year. And this is good work and there's nothing wrong with it. But the reason I put this up is to show that the work that has been occurring in these areas, and lots of good work has been done in these areas, has all been done in isolation. And there are gaps in these, and these gaps, in East Bay Mud's case, are driven by the fact that East Bay Med doesn't own the land in between the areas they're mitigating, right? So they have neither the responsibility nor the authority to conduct work on those lands. And the problem is, while this work is good, a fire at the size and intensity we are talking about is going to behave like a liquid. And as anyone who has an old roof knows, your roof can be 99% intact and you still have a leak. So this becomes a roof with a leak where the fire will simply blow around the area where we have done fuels treatment. So the intent of the proposal that we submitted to the state for the North Orinda Shaded Fuel Break was to create a continuous line that ran in a manner to form essentially a catcher's mitt that would protect our communities, both in the East Bay and along the Highway 24 corridor, from a large regional fire emanating out of the wilderness lands. So this, and I apologize that it's a little small, but that's Akalani's High School right here at Pleasant Hill Road and Highway 24. And that is the Inspiration Point. That's Nimitz Way running down through there. There's Lake Anza for orientation. So what this project intends to do is to run a shaded fuel break along East Bay Parks land up to the Lafayette-Orinda border through private land, then East Bay Mudland, private land, East Bay Mudland, more East Bay Mudland, East Bay Parks land, to create an uninterrupted barrier that would protect both the East Bay communities of Berkeley, El Cerrito, Kensington, Oakland, as well as the Highway 24 communities and all the communities south and west of those areas from a large-scale fire coming off the wilderness lands. And I will defer to Chief Thiele from East Bay Parks for details having to do with their lands, but we'll say this is a shaded fuel break. And what I mean by that is that the tree canopy, with a few isolated exceptions, will largely be left intact. And the work we are going to be conducting will be to remove ground fuels and ladder fuels that prevent a ground-based fire from moving up into the trees. And by leaving that tree canopy intact, we will reduce the future regrowth of understory in later years that would occur if you remove the canopy and allowed sunlight to flood the forest floor underneath. The next chapter is internal risk reduction strategies. So while that fuel break is going to be helpful to stop the ground component of a large regional fire, fires also spread through a three-dimensional ember cast component where sparks fly through the air, sometimes miles in advance of the fire. In the case of a conifer bark flake, it can be 3 miles in advance of the fire. And if that thing, that burning ember, lands on a receptive fuel bed, a pile of dry leaves, uncut grass, a gutter, or a valley of a roof that is choked with dead vegetation, that will produce a fire in its own right. And all of our work on that shaded fuel break will be for naught because the fire will have jumped the line. So I'm going to talk briefly about what we're doing in the fire district to prepare the community for this problem and to harness the latent capacity of all of the residents who can do work on their own parcels and can do it at scale right now to help reduce our community risk. So the first, FireWise community designation. It's a great program by the National Fire Protection Association. It is the program of record for doing community-based work. It is tremendously helpful to harness a neighborhood to focus on the problem. There is an end state which gets people past the I'm going to do this someday stage, and it is recognized by insurance companies. So it is a helpful adjunct to utilize when you're engaged in discussions with your insurance company about either the increase in your rates or the uninsurability of your property. Second line here has to do with home ignition zone best practices, and what we're really talking about there is creating defensible space. So creating space around a home where we have removed or reduced the quantity of flammable vegetation so that we buy time for responding units to come put the fire out. We improve the survivability profile of any residents who are going to be sheltering inside that home, and we reduce the speed and intensity of fire spread. And the reason this matters so much is that in the case of a large-scale wildfire, your default location is your home. If you do not get an evacuation order, if you are unable to execute that evacuation order, or your evacuation routes are untenable because of either flame impingement or congestion, your house is where you're going to ride out that fire. And if you have prepared your home is going to be a better place to ride out that fire. So there's both community and personal benefit from doing this work, as well as you reduce the likelihood that your house will burn down, which I think we can all agree is a good thing. In the district, we provide free assessments and recommendations. This is a way that we help teach neighbors who can then teach more neighbors. And what we have found after we've made a certain number of entries into a neighborhood, they're not calling for us to come out anymore because they're all helping each other. And there's a very bottom-up, resilient element to it that is a lot of fun to watch. And then lastly, evacuation planning. We've been running a number of large-scale evacuation exercises because we know in all of these areas it is going to take more time and more road width than we have to remove the community, and we need to be very, very good and very efficient at moving people out. Give me 1 second, sir. This is the fuels mitigation work we recommend. This is not rocket science. We're not talking about building pianos here. We're talking about very basic stuff. And what we have found is that when people actually mobilize to start doing it, they are surprised at how quickly it occurs. And if you just fill up the green bin every week, that's a good start. And then we organize communities to take advantage of events where we bring out a chipper and we can accelerate the process by harnessing the community's attention around the availability of that chipper. Most importantly here is notification. If you don't know that there is a problem, you can't get out. And we trade space for time on large wildfires. And the space is being traded, and that time is being used whether you were using it well or not. So the sooner we can get the word out, as soon as we can execute an effective evacuation notification, the sooner people will start to flow out down those limited roadways. If we do not have the way to effectively get the word out about an evacuation, we're going to become farther and farther behind the problem set. AC Alerts is in this county. On the other side of the hill, we use the CWS, which is run by the Contra Costa County Sheriff's System. We encourage everyone to sign up for it. But if you go to the third bullet there, the Neighborhood Notification Plan, we know that no matter what system we use, there are going to be people we don't reach. There's no such thing as a 100% effective system in this environment. And so what we have encouraged every neighborhood to do is to prepare a neighborhood plan that's going to act as a ripple from a dropped pebble on a pond. So if we get a hold of one neighbor, they'll get a hold of several more and several more and several more, and the chain of notification will occur inside the neighborhood. And then the second part of that is then a chain of assistance. So if there is a neighbor who is unable to make it down the stairs, if there's a neighbor who is unable to drive, identifying both a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary person in that neighborhood who can help them. Because the brutal truth on a large-scale fire is help is not coming immediately. In the district, we have 38,000 residents and we have 17 firefighters on duty per day. And all 17 of those firefighters are going to be up on the hill trying to stop the spread of the fire. And we're not going to be able to respond to individual calls for service for assistance with getting downstairs or evacuation. Yet every one of those cars coming out of the community probably has at least one empty seat. And if the community can self-organize, bottom up in a resilient manner, it's going to be much more effective because the people who are going to support the evacuation are already forward staged, present in those neighborhoods with the ability to help. The weather alert radios are put up there for those who are interested in an extra layer of notification. There's been a lot of discussion about air raid sirens and so forth. My personal opinion, weather alert radio, which is a $29 item and comes with a 120 decibel siren and a battery backup, will perform the same function from inside the walls of your home. And lastly, we recommend that everyone get an uninterrupted power supply, which will keep, if you have a cordless phone, that'll keep the base station functioning because the phones will not work without power to the base station. And it will keep your Wi-Fi operating so that even in the event of a cellular outage, you will still be able to connect to the outside world for updates and information on your smartphone because you'll be inside the Wi-Fi envelope and you'll still be able to communicate with the outside world.
Are these slides going to be available?
I'm happy to provide them.
What?
I would be happy to provide them.
Can you tell us how, because there's a lot of rich information.
Certainly. I will defer to the council member.
We're going to take questions after all of the presentations. Please write your question down on the card. Thank you.
And then lastly, this is what in the district we are doing with the help of a very generous grant from the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. We've been developing some adjuncts to use technology to aid in early detection and notification because there are going to continue to be fires that exceed our capacity to put them out. And when those fires occur, we need to focus our efforts on how we rapidly evacuate the community. And if we are unable to process that information in a timely manner because we have a single point of failure, a single human who is trying to synthesize and process all these streams of information in real time, they're very likely to become overwhelmed. So we're trying to harness some technology to help with that process. I will spare you the details other to say this is the idea of what we're working on. And I will walk you through how this is going to work in just a moment. Sensors to give early detection of wildfire. This happens to be an example of our latest version. We have 200 of these in the field now along the northern edge of the district. They use temperature and humidity to give an indication that there is a potential wildfire. From there, you need verification, either through something in the air or ground-based cameras. That generates a wildfire response that sends crews out to suppress the fire. At the same time, you take real-time weather, you take fire spread modeling, you put that on top of evacuation polygons to create an evacuation decision support tool, and that lends itself to decisions having to do with evacuation traffic flows, of how many people you can move through a road system at any given time. Apologize. All right, apologize for that. So this is a really complicated way of saying there that if you treat, as we talked about, treating a fire as a liquid, well, same thing if you think of evacuation routes as drainages for water. So we take a look at where all the people are going to get out, and we take a look at where all the intersections where those people are going to have coincident routes, where they are going to cross paths. And we use those to allocate the limited police department and volunteer resources we have for traffic control to get the choke points. And I think all you have to do is look at any of our communities during the morning rush hour to confirm that our road system will not support getting everyone in and out of the community in a timely manner. Now imagine the morning rush hour with smoke and embers down to the ground, everyone having a heightened state of fear, and fire engines trying to go the opposite direction while everyone else is trying to get out. And I think we can all accept that that's going to be a very challenging moment. So what we've done in the district, we've established evacuation polygons, and the key piece here is these are prioritized and they are time-phased in their orders so that we can, in a deliberate manner, we can move those who are closest to the threat out of the way of the fire the soonest without notifying people who are not at threat, who will be clogging up the roads downstream of those who are in the greatest threat. Prioritized evacuations. So this is a tool that we're developing with some partners that will allow us to rapidly categorize all of that information and do something with it. So the first thing, you have each one of the evacuation polygons, you have all the information that's associated with it, how many homes, average evacuation time, and any high-value targets within that area that need to be prioritized for notification. To include things like hospitals that you cannot evacuate, you have to shelter in place just because there are so many people. The next step is you do fire modeling. So you take the weather conditions on any given day, you drop points down, and you model out the 1, 3, and 5 hour spreads so you can see where this fire is anticipated to go. And we hope to put every fire out in its incipient phase before it spreads. But the intent of something like this is to have a machine that is remorselessly running the what-if scenarios, planning ahead, so that we are not caught behind the curve if a fire does spread and we have to move into large-scale evacuations. Next step here, on that specific fire at the Lafayette Reservoir, you call out the 1, 3, and 5 hour implications, both for number of people, of homes that will be threatened, and the number of acres that are modeled to be consumed. Within that then, in the bottom here, you have recommendations by polygon for who should be evacuated. And the idea is to give a responder all the information that they would have processed in near real time if they were capable of synthesizing that information, but you give it to them through a deterministic system that will always run. It does not require a human who might be driving an SUV through smoke and fire with 2 radios at high volume to try to process all of this in real time. And then lastly here, we link those to existing traffic tools. If Waze can get 1 million people in and out of San Francisco every day, they can certainly assist with getting all of us out of our communities in real time, and allowing us as first responders to enter what we know about the impacts of the road network, what we know about fire spread, to enter that through these systems so that people can receive personalized evacuation recommendations before they leave their homes. And with that, I will leave it there and say thank you all very much for the opportunity to come talk, and turn it over to, I think,
Okay. Now we'll hear from Devin Woolridge. Devin?
Behind you.
Oh, you're behind me, great. Devin is the UC Berkeley Facilities Manager, and he'll talk about UC Berkeley's fire mitigation plan.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. UC Berkeley performs both annual project-driven and overall vegetation through facility management through 800 acres of wildland of the campus. Oh, I'm sorry. That better? The campus's goals are to increase life safety for emergency services and evacuation, reduce property damage, and increase institutional reliability. Last year, UC Berkeley was awarded a $3.6 million grant through CAL FIRE's California Climate Investment and Fire Prevention Program. Annual projects on the campus include roadside treatments along 3 thoroughfares leading to and from UC Berkeley: Centennial Drive, Grizzly Peak, and Claremont Boulevard, and defensible space creation and maintenance around structures within the Hill campus. Projects also include hazardous tree removal, invasive shrub removal, etc. Vegetation facility maintenance occurs weekly through facility services ground staff that perform overall cleanup and light gardening at several turnouts along both Grizzly Peak and Claremont Boulevard. Management of this area is guided through the campus's long-range development plan. UC Berkeley facilities are managed by Facility Services, which fits nicely because this part of the campus has the equipment to conduct the management and the expertise regarding the issue. Here's a map that identifies some of the annual work that we're doing. The orange is defensible space. The green is roadside treatment within 10 feet of the road surface sides. The dark purple is turnout maintenance. The regular purple is tree planting. And finally, the yellow is removal of a eucalyptus, Monterey pine, and acacia from places where they have already been removed in the past. As I stated last year, UC Berkeley was awarded a $3.6 million grant through the California Climate Investment Program. The grant will treat vegetation in 250 acres of the Hill campus to reduce wildfire hazard and potential damage to approximately 3,000 habitual structures and institutions, as well as improve life safety for 3,000 plus residents. We're hoping to have the work completed by 2022. Excuse me? I'm sorry? Well, I guess we'll wait till the questions and answers period, okay? Here is a map of the project areas that we're going to be doing. Orange is the evacuation support, and pink is the hazard reduction. Later this fall, the campus will begin phase 1 of the project. This phase will target areas along Centennial Drive forested by flammable vegetation and high fuel volume, and areas within 100 feet of roads, fire trails, and buildings. The treatment is consistent with the UC Berkeley LRDP and associated environmental impact plan. In the future, the campus will perform similar treatment to the Jordan Fire Trail and Claremont Boulevard. Phase 2 of the project, phase 2? Okay, phase 2 of the project will begin to address reducing fuel volume and wildfire risk through the thinning of trees with high fuel volume and removing understory. The campus recently hired an environmental consulting firm to complete the environmental review and will guide the public process. Here's a map of those areas that we're going to be working in. Treatment for phase 2 will include the removal of selected trees and shrubs with heavy equipment. Some trees will be chipped, some will have the chips left in place, others will have the chips used on campus, and some will be used for a gasifier that can produce electricity and biochar. Some trees will be used as roadside barriers, and some will be left standing. guess. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess here I am. Okay. No, let's see. Got my slides all screwed up. Here we go. The campuses. Oh, the project. Oh, boy. Here are some details of the phase that you can see will reduce the fire safety, including compromising of healthy, sturdy trees. A fine example of this is the southern section of Claremont Canyon. Our long-term goals include beginning working with our existing vegetation, expectations of natural regeneration, the augmenting of the areas with oak seedlings, plantings, and continued invasive shrub removal. There's a need to adapt our practices. I want to thank you, and we'll take the questions in the question and answer. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilbridge. Thank you very much. Now we will hear from Fire Chief Aileen Taylor from East Bay Regional Parks.
Hi, everybody. I like this better. I have a very difficult name. It's Eileen Taylor, not spelled that way at all. So all through college, I answered to Alien Thiele. So you guys came up with some new ones, though, tonight, so it's pretty good. So you're going to hear some repetitive themes from Chief Winokur, and myself, Devin, and Chief Brannigan, I'm sure. But I think the goal is if you hear it enough, if you don't already know it, you will by the end of the evening. So I'm here to talk. I'm the Chief of East Bay Regional Park District's Fire Department, and I'm here to tell you about our Wildfire Hazard Reduction and Resource Management Plan, lovingly called the WRUMF. And to brag a little bit, because we've actually been doing this work since the 1970s in one model or another. There are times when we did fuel reduction work and it didn't work at all. We actually caused a greater problem, and so we've learned from our mistakes. But some of the goals of the Wildfire Hazard Reduction and Resource Management Plan are to reduce the hazards in the district-owned lands that really border the wildland-urban interface. And as you know, we have quite a bit. We've got over 121,000 acres, and we have a lot of WUI in those 121,000 acres. So to maintain and enhance the ecological values for the plants and wildlife, because even though we do have fuels reduction goals, we are a park district, and so the environment and all of the ecological values that we have are very important to us, and that's what we've told the public we're going to do, is to manage those in perpetuity. But also to preserve the aesthetic landscapes for the park users. People like walking through shaded areas. They like their parks. They like their beautiful trees. And so we have to do fuels reduction work, but we have to do it in a very thoughtful manner. And providing a vegetation management plan that is both effective and financially sustainable. So those are the goals, in a nutshell, of our WRUMF. A little bit of history here. Everybody talks about the 1991 Oakland Berkeley Hills fire. Unfortunately, that's been trumped. It's been way trumped. Not, pardon the pun. It's not bringing up our dear president, but last year, because of the Camp Fire and the Tubbs Fire before that and the Rim Fire before that, last year here in the Bay Area, a fire that wasn't that close. I mean, it was close by some perspective, but the Paradise Fire, the Camp Fire, here in the Bay Area, it's not just fires that are in our own backyard that affect us, but we had, for 13 days straight, Spare the Air Day, we had, and this is a proven statistic, we had the worst air quality on the planet, and that's including Beijing. So that's a big deal, and it's something that people forget about. And so 1.7 billion If that fire was to repeat today, God forbid, that number would be fivefold, I'm sure. A little bit of history. Here's a picture of the East Bay Hills in 1899. Here's a picture of the East Bay Hills in 2009. Here is Round Top or Sibley Regional Park, which most of you are pretty familiar with. That's what it looked like circa 1900. That's what it looks like today. So how did we get there? Well, there's a lot of ways that we got there. Only you can prevent forest fires. We had about 100 years, almost 100 years, of us putting out, everything, every little fire. We didn't have prescribed fires for the most part. We didn't do broadcast burning for the most part, not to manage fuels anyway, to manage other things, maybe invasive plants or manage for crops, but there was a great effort on at least a federal level to squash all fires that we had. What that did really was let some of our vegetation get out of control. And then we planted trees, of course. And here's a great example of a eucalyptus plantation in the 1890s. And so, we're not trying to make eucalyptus necessarily the villain. It's a great tree. But everything has pluses and minuses, and it's proven that eucalyptus trees, simply by the nature of their physiology, can cast embers, which is what Chief Whitaker was talking about. It does some other things too. There's a process called alleliopathy where the oils from eucalyptus will drop down to the soil and actually create their own monoculture, thus making the fire issue worse. We planted pine trees. Pine trees are great, but they have a lifespan. They live about 65, 75, maybe some of them 85 years, and then they die, usually standing if they haven't fallen over. So we haven't managed those things very well, and in some cases we've created our own problem. After the 91 fire, the Park District decided that they really needed to do something more. And so there were a lot of things that were involved in the Wildfire Hazard Reduction and Resource Management Plan. See what I mean? It's a mouthful. Coming to play, but there's some important things to understand about it. It's a comprehensive system-wide program. So it does cover a very specific area in the Park District, which I will show you in the next slide or two. But it's practices that we have been doing for the history of the Park District, really. It's science-based. It's got an ecological approach to fuels management. Shaded fuel break is something the Park District's been doing for a long time because we understand that if you remove all the trees and you daylight the environment below, what you're going to end up with is potentially an entirely new crop of fuel in the form of brush or broom or some other kind of vegetation that needs to be managed. But we are in a really great position to be able to manage those as time goes on because the Park District plans to be around forever. And this plan that we have isn't a one and done. It's something we've been doing since 2009 and we're going to continue to do. In fact, the plan provides to go out 20 to 30 years and to be evaluated several times in that process before the 20 and 30 year mark. Park operations is an integral part of the fuels management. It's not just fire department that's out there doing the work. We employ student conservation, Civic Corps, CAL FIRE crews, and also the park rangers, the park people that you see in the parks every day that know the parks in and out. They help us avoid things like trying to do a fuels management project while a marathon's happening or cross-country is practicing in our parks. They also make us aware of different little issues that every park might have. So we work with them. We focus on follow-up and long-term maintenance. So every time we go into a spot, an initial, we call them recommended treatment areas or RTAs. We have initial RTAs that we go into that are initial only one time, right? Then they become maintenance and they shift over to kind of a different mode. We have a stewardship department that comes in and they evaluate all the work that gets done every time we go into a recommended treatment area. And then they continue to monitor it, as does the operations staff and as does the fire department. So we meet monthly in a group that we call the Interdisciplinary Fuels Management team, and we discuss what we're working on now, what's working on the project that we're working on, and what the plans are for the next month or the next project. It's definitely a coordinated effort. And then we evaluate and review and improve adaptive management. That's what you do, right? For it to be successful. If any of you have questions about our fuels management plan that gets very site-specific into your neighborhoods, if you go to this website, there's actually a list that will list all the RTAs and will tell you exactly what the RTA is, what is planned for that particular part of land. Is it to cut the grass to 3 to 4 inches? Is it to remove all the brush? Is it to limb up the trees? It'll give you the specifics and the prescription. You have to do a little bit of looking around, but it's fairly, if I can do it, anybody can do it. So I think there's a pointer on here. Is there a pointer? Yes, there is. So we start all the way up here, just about Sobrani Ridge, and it comes all the way down to Lake Chabot. So it's 3,000 acres and 9 regional parks. Does that mean that's the only place we do fuels reduction work in the Park District? No. In other areas of the Park District, we have cattle grazing, we have sheep, we have goats, we have all of our trails that are mowed along either side. The fire department itself got 8 new positions this past year with the board of directors' help. And operations also got a trails crew that'll be coming along and brushing along either side of the trail. It's management again, right? And a lot of you have probably got your favorite single track trails. And when we have a good weather, event like we've had this winter, as you're walking along, your trail started out maybe pretty wide, and then maybe some poison oak grew into it, maybe some, grass grew up alongside, and all of a sudden kind of you're walking down the trail being careful not to touch anything. And so what the trails crew is going to do with operations is come in and cut back all those grasses and also use brushing to push everything back to make the trails a little bit safer. There's weeding that happens all over the Park District to make parking lots safer, to push back the fuels from the parking lots, around picnic tables, around all the buildings and visitor centers. So there's fuels reduction work going on all over the Park District. Fire hazard implementation, how do we do that? Well, we have the internal team that I talked about, which is the fuels group, which includes our stewardship, which is just a different word for resource management crew, the fire department and operations. And then we have our external partners, PG&E, City of Oakland, City of Berkeley, UC Berkeley, the Hills Emergency Forum, of which the Park District is a founding member, civilian crews like the SCA, CAL FIRES, other counties, and other local response areas like Moraga or Orinda. And with the other fire departments, because we're the Park District and we're geographically so spread out, we interface with 24 different fire agencies, and we really work on interoperability, which means that we can communicate and we can function well with them on fires. A couple of tools we use. This is public's favorite. Fire hazard reduction crews. Like I said, we have our own fire station staffing that goes out, does pile burns, and fuel reduction work, but also we've got a brand new fuels crew that'll be starting out. They're going to go through a kind of a quick academy in August. They'll be coming out of Fire Station 2, which is our oldest fire station on Redwood Road. They'll be based out of there, but you'll see them doing works in all the parks, in the WUI especially. These are some of the things that Chief Whitaker was talking about. Brontosaurus, they've got some great names for them. The Feller Buncher, rubber tire skidder, and the grapple-fed chipper. Those are just some of the tools we use. Not as cute as the goats, but equally as effective. Prescribed fire, we're going to be doing a prescribed fire as well as a resource burn out at Point Pinole. And then these are a couple of projects we've done in the past. This is a Redwood and East Ridge Trail, and you can see over there we've got the before, and this is after. That's a good example of the shaded fuel break. This is Wildcat Canyon. This is work that's going on right now. The project almost complete, but you can see all of these fuels. They're about 8 to 10 feet high, which can put out about 20-foot plus flame lengths. Over to this. This is how it looks right now. And this is a project that was started about 3 weeks ago. And then we've got some more examples of what we're trying to, visually it's hard People say, well, what does that mean, you're going to reduce the fuels? This is a good example of what it looks like before, where you've got the grass that comes up and touches just right at the base of the trees, so it goes from a ground fire potentially to up into the trees, which is not what we want. It makes it difficult for firefighters to fight those kind of trees, plus we have that kind of fire. Plus we have the added issue of the ember casting, to something like this, where if the grass catches fire, it can come through the trees, not catching the trees necessarily on fire. And then what we have, when we do a shaded fuel break and we have fire come through, the flame lakes stay low because the grass is low, it doesn't reach up into the trees. Then what happens when you come back is that you've got not the devastation that you see when you don't control the fuels. Instead, what you've got is grass that's all burnt up, but the trees are still there. Here's another example of our eucalyptus. They're really close together. There's all the potential in the world for the ribbons that come off the eucalyptus to catch fire, carry it up into a crown fire. And again, you've got ember cast, it's an issue, and the potential, depending on the weather, for complete devastation. But if you come over here, and you can still leave the trees. You don't have to get rid of all of them. In fact, sometimes it's a good idea for soil stability and other things. You've got chips on the ground left here. The ground, if fire comes through here, it's going to stay on the ground. It's going to be completely and totally accessible to firefighters, and it'll be easy for them to put out, leaving the trees in place. So that's what we're going for. Those are just some examples. And we don't just deal with areas of trees with pines and bays and oaks. We also deal with the brushlands. They're just as important. In an area like this, if this were to catch fire, it'd be really difficult for firefighters to get in and do a mobile attack safely. So we do deal with grasslands and shrublands like we've got here, or brushlands if you want to call it that. This is more what we're looking for. An area where we've got a patchwork. Now, ideally, the goats hadn't come into this area yet, but ideally, this would be perfect if that grass was 4 to 6 inches high. So, Moraga Orinda is going to do their job. City of Berkeley Fire Department's going to do their job. East Bay Regional Park District's going to do our job. But at the end of the day, what's most important is that you do yours. This is one of those common themes I was talking about. The more you harden your house and your neighborhood, not just your house, it's really important that your neighborhood gets involved, because all it takes is that one receptacle of fuel, like Chief Winokur was talking about, for an ember to fall on leaves in a gutter, pine needles, underneath the tree on top of your house. All it takes is one, and then you've got an issue that could potentially end up hurting the rest of the neighborhood. If you've got a neighbor that's not doing anything about it, don't assume that they're being complacent. It could be that you've got, somebody there that's maybe handicapped, or they're older and they don't have the means. So there's been a couple of folks that have called the fire department. One particular was a gentleman that had just found out he was very sick. He had no other family and he had no means. And so what the neighborhood did was they got together and they helped him out. And I'm sure there's lots of people like that. That also can open the door for starting the conversation with your neighbors about some of those things that were mentioned prior, which is, if in case of an evacuation, do you have a ride out of here? Is there somebody, that's going to come and check on you? So check in with your neighbors, it's not much different than an HOA, right? Everybody's kind of in the same boat. Check in with your neighbors and really work on not just hardening your house, but hardening your neighborhood. You've seen all these before. The real important ones, when I've been out of the county on fires, is the unscreened attic and foundation vents. Make sure that embers can't get through to a place that you can't see, because there have been cases, sorry, I'm getting tired now. There have been cases where there's been open air vents, embers have gotten through, fire departments or a fire engine on a strike team has passed by, the house looks good, they come back a day later, the house is burnt to the ground, right? Because there was an ember somewhere that got in there somehow, and it's not a guarantee, but it's best practice to make sure that you've got those things with fine mesh covering on them so embers can't get in there and go unseen. And I'd say also, make sure that your address numbers are visible from the street. That's another big one. You've seen these before. There's a bunch of stuff back there, but those are the two main ones. It's really difficult when we're kind of triaging neighborhoods to go in if you can't see the address. It's very important that it's visible from the street, not a drive you have to go down, because just like you guys aren't going to have time, the fire department's not going to have time either. So give us every effort you can. And I think the combustible materials and the overgrown dry landscaping, that's just a given. That stuff needs to go. So our funding sources, the Park District has worked really hard to have lots of tools in the tool basket when it comes to funding sources. Measure FF was just recently passed. Thank you. It was passed 86%. I think we only needed 67%. That extends our Measure CC investment, which was $10 million. The Measure FF is projected to give us 14.2, and that is all money that we use to reduce fuels. There's some other projects too, but I don't care about those. I just care about the stuff that comes for us to reduce fuels. So also $5.7 million from FEMA, and then the East Bay Regional Park District General Fund. It's one of our major reasons for being right now is fuels reduction work. That's it. Who's next?
Okay, we're going to take a little break for you to write your questions down now. If you have questions for any of the three presenters, we're going to collect your cards now, and if you then want other cards to ask our fire chief questions, raise your hand and we'll give you more cards for questions. People will be coming around to collect them. Just hold them up. Okay, now the part of the presentation the next part of the presentation has to do with Berkeley and what we're doing here in Berkeley. As you've heard, our neighbors are working really hard to do the best they can to deal with the problem. But what are we doing here in Berkeley? So, tonight we have our fire chief, Dave Brannigan, and he will let you know some of the things he's been working on.
Thank you, Council Member. I want to thank the previous presenters, my colleagues. We invited them specifically because, well, let me ask you guys. See, interactive. Here we go. What's our big fuel problem in Berkeley? Residents. Somebody said it, residents, right? So I invited Moraga Rinda because they're working on the shaded fuel break and also those early notifications and warnings. The fire is coming that way. We're going to be communicating with them, so we're going to hear about it. I invited UC Berkeley because they have tons of open space up on the hill. Between them and the lab, the city of Oakland, we've got all this grassland and understory and trees. And then, of course, East Bay Parks, because while people think of Tilden being in Berkeley, it's not. It's the East Bay Park District, right? And Chief Tiley, and her crews do a ton of work, and really thoughtful work. That's one thing I want to communicate here, is that what's going on in all three of those jurisdictions is very thoughtful, very planned out. They engage community groups and environmental groups to make sure we're doing sensible fuel reduction so that we can reduce the risk of fire. We're not going to stop fires, but if we can get fires to scuttle along the ground, we can handle it. The night of the Tubbs fire and the Sonoma County fires, we had a fire behind Ajax Place. It was in a treated, shaded fuel managed area. We contained it to about an acre. We had a heavy response to it, about 20 engines right off the bat, and we controlled it despite extreme fire weather conditions in Berkeley that night where that fire was. Once that was controlled, Once that was controlled, we sent mutual aid up to Sonoma County to help out. So the work they're doing informs us, but what can we do as the city of Berkeley? I'll be quite blunt, not a whole lot. We don't have a lot of open space. We don't have a lot of fuels like that. So that's where we need you to work with us on reducing the fuel load in your property, whether it's understory. That's my big concern. We want to keep our trees, but like the previous speakers have said, we want to reduce the ladder fuels, the shrubbery, the things that can take it from a grass fire to a canopy fire. Because if it's in the canopy, then it's in our roofs, it's impinging on our city, and we're in trouble. So we need to reduce ladder fuels to keep fire low and on the ground so that we can get it out and you guys can get out. Oh. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do both for yourselves but also for evacuation. So we've seen really good evacuation plans in place in places like Paradise. The problem is when it really hit the fan, they didn't have the capacity or the warning or the thought in advance to get out. So we're doing a lot of work in Berkeley both on figuring out how we could do evacuation, whether it's prioritized and getting small jurisdictions out at a time, or and getting early notification so that if you have, and I want you to hear this, if you anticipate having trouble evacuating, if you live in a space that is confined with a narrow street, if you have mobility issues, if you have special medical needs, if you have anything you think about would make it hard for you to get yourself out because help will be delayed in these situations, we're going to try to give you the tools to get yourself out early, a day or two maybe before there's even a chance of a fire. So we're going to talk about that, and we're happy to pursue that. So we are going to start with a video because I'm a child of the 80s and let's just watch TV, just to give you a little sense of what we've been through as a city in Berkeley. We did test this. It takes a second to load. Meet your neighbor. Has everybody met your neighbor? Who knows what fire zone they live in? Huh? Berkeley's fire zones? So I'll give you a hint. There's 3 fire zones in Berkeley. There's 3. Okay. What's fire zone 3? What was that? Panoramic Hill, yeah. Fire Zone 3, Panoramic Hill. We're scheduling a meeting with them because we got to figure out what to do up there. How about Fire Zone 2? What's that? Yeah, we're in Fire Zone 2 now. It's parts over by the Claremont, up through campus, and then down through here over towards Kensington and Albany. What's Fire Zone 1? Everything else. Everything else. Grizzly Peak's part of Fire Zone 2. We got it? I see something. Here we go. Okay.
The summer of '23 was hot and rainless, leaving the hills explosively dry. On September 17th, high winds out of the north blew across a small grass fire in Wildcat Canyon and quickly carried it over the ridge down into North Berkeley. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the fire had moved with astounding speed, jumping from the backwoods of Wildcat Canyon to the city limits of Berkeley. Berkeley firefighters were overmatched at the outset. Still, it was man against nature, and nature was winning. People were also taking matters into their own hands, defending their homes as best they could, trying to stave off the inevitable, trying to hold off the great fire with garden hoses and no water.
There was no water coming out. It was a little, maybe a drop or two, but it was maybe water in the hose already. And so my mother saw that. Oh, she broke down to cry.
By about 4:30 in the afternoon, the winds began to die down and the hot, dry air grew humid. The fire laid waste to 60 city blocks. Almost 600 buildings burned to the ground. While the dust settled and the ashes cooled, stalks of chimneys stood as silent sentinels in a graveyard of destruction. Newly homeless, a woman heated soup on the ashes of what had been her home. Berkeley had the aftermath of war written on its landscape, but somehow, amazingly, not a single life was lost. Finally, the fire burned down to the intersection of the wide boulevards of Shattuck Avenue and Hearst. Out of fuel and no longer driven by the wind, the fire stopped here. Just how did the fire in the Berkeley Hills get started? Well, after the winds died down and the ashes finally cooled, the U.S. Forestry Service began an investigation, and they found that hikers on a trail smoking cigarettes accidentally started the fire. The 1923 fire has been called the worst disaster in the history of Berkeley, but it was not a lesson well learned. Rather, it was more a painful preview of what was to come, evidence of the truth to the perennial prediction that the East Bay Hills are a disaster waiting to happen.
Okay, so 1923, right? Burned basically from Wildcat Canyon down to Shattuck Avenue, right? Over 600 homes. It would be over 6,000 today. Thank you, Jennifer. Just want to take a minute to thank actually my staff who are here. So we've got Assistant Chief Keith May. He's in charge of special operations, which includes the Office of Emergency Services that do a lot of planning. We've got Kin Chin in the back. Kin is, if you have been involved at all in community organizing around preparedness in Berkeley, the guy organizing that for the last decade. And Jennifer Lazo, who's been our AV specialist tonight, is an emergency services coordinator. And for those of you that know her, she's taught many, many classes. You've probably been in a preparedness class. We are unfortunately losing her to the city of Los Angeles. We could not compete with their fine offer and advancement opportunities, so she's going to be going down and taking all of her good ideas that she has blessed us with to Los Angeles. So they will actually have good disaster preparedness finally in the City of Angels. So thank you, Jennifer, for your years of work. The city appreciates you. Okay, I think you've seen a lot of pictures of brush. This is generally bad, right? We don't want Wildcat Canyon to look like that, and yet it often does. So we just talked about the fire zones. Fire zone 1, everything else. Fire zone 2, you can see is this beige area through here. This little red mark is Panoramic Hill, that's fire zone 3. This line demarcates, is the line of demarcation for the very high fire hazard severity zone, which is a CAL FIRE designation. It's a state designation, which is important because it opens us up for grant opportunities and other funding sources. But in terms of Berkeley's ordinances and how we operate in the hazardous hills areas, zones 2 and 3 are what's important. A lot of what we're going to talk about is zone 2. Zone 3, Panoramic Hill, is its own special problem that we are going to be working with that neighborhood specifically on. What do we need you to do? So the National Weather Service has started issuing red flag days on, I don't want to say on a whim, but on much lower acuity weather conditions than what the fire service traditionally considered it. So we have been working primarily with the National Weather Service and also other fire agencies to identify a matrix of when they say it's red flag, what does that really mean for us? And what we really are worried about are extreme fire weather situations. Red flag days will occur periodically throughout the East Bay Hills. We as a city can get target forecasts for Berkeley itself. And we've broken it down to this matrix. Don't get too hung up right now on all of the numbers. It's basically relative humidity and wind. You heard in the video, the 1923 fire stopped because the wind changed and humidity rose. We would not have stopped that fire. I say Wicks as the Berkeley Fire Department. We would not have stopped that fire had the wind not shifted and humidity risen. So what we as a city are going to be planning for, and we're going to be messaging to you, is what to do when it's red flag or extreme fire danger. Red flag, we're going to do things like put up patrols. We'll have extra crews in the hills. We might call Moraga Render or East Bay Parks and say, hey, what are you guys doing? Do we have a burn ban in place? We will activate our city's emergency operations center at a low level to monitor the situation. You guys are going to sign up. Everybody's going to leave here having signed up for AC Alert tonight, right? You're going to get a message from us on red flag days. Hey, it's going to be bad weather. We'll hopefully get 24 to 48 hours notice. Just to give you some heads up. Now on the days where it comes to extreme fire danger, again, we'll know this in advance. We'll put flags up around the city. We'll send out more alerts. We'll send out more patrols. The state has funded something called pre-positioning, so we can request strike teams from around the state before a fire starts be staged in areas where there's likely fire danger. So we're going to request pre-positioned strike teams on extreme fire danger days. This matrix is not lined up exactly with what PG&E is doing, but if you haven't heard, PG&E has a plan now because of the potential for power lines to start fires. They have plans to de-energize their systems. We just had a presentation, the county chiefs this past week, where PG&E said they're actually thinking about shutting down transmission lines. So the first 2 years of this program, it was very localized. It was, the Berkeley Hills, or maybe half of Berkeley could be impacted. Now they're talking about transmission lines, which could shut down entire regions. They could lose the entire state of Nevada if they shut down the right transmission line. This is from PG&E themselves. So we as an organization, as a city, as the districts, as other agencies, are working directly with PG&E to say, hey, we need to know what's going to happen. We need to know when this is going to take place. They're saying we could get, again, it's based on weather predictions, so 24, 48 hours notice. We're going to do the same things where we stand up our emergency operations center. Now, for both of these situations, we're going to be providing education and materials to you guys, the community, because you need to be thinking, well, what does that mean for me, right? If the city says there's bad weather coming, and I live in a place that I'm not sure I could get out of if there were a fire, it's on you to think, okay, maybe I've got a relative who lives somewhere else nearby, a day or two away, or anywhere but in the high fire hazard severity zone. Maybe you've got a hotel you could stay at. Maybe you have friends you could go stay with out in another part of the county. We want you thinking about, what are my options? If I can do something now before I'm told I have to leave, how do I do that? If PG&E is going to be shutting off my power for up to a week, because they can't just shut the power off and turn it back on. They have to inspect all their lines. It takes time for them to re-energize their system. So if I'm not going to have power, we're going to take questions at the end. You can write them down on a card. If I'm going to be out of power for a week, how am I going to do that? Think about it like an earthquake. How am I planning for those systems? And then if there is a fire, if I haven't left already, what do I need to get out of here, right? This is different than an earthquake kit where you might be sheltering in place. You might be staying in your home after an earthquake. If this is a fire, we need you to leave. We need you to get out of the area in a systematic and safe way, but you need to know what things you're going to take. We have a sample back on the table of a sample go bag. You can have this in your car, you could have it in your garage, you could have it at work, you can have it wherever you need to get out of in these situations. Think of the important things in your life: copies of documents, copies of records, medications, or at least lists of medications. You may not be able to keep all your meds safe for a long period of time in storage, so at least have your prescriptions so you can get them when you get out. One of the biggest things we have problems getting people to evacuate are their pets. So in your go bag, think about your pets. Do you have a leash? Do you have a water bowl? Do you have dog food? Do you have the medications your pets need? Because we don't want the reason you stay and get hurt to be because you stayed behind to take care of a pet. We want to make sure that pet is accommodated and leaves with you. We also want you, again, there's a lot of, when this fire starts, it's going to be all we can do to get up and get an assessment of the situation, much less put the fire out, much less help you get out of your home. So you're going to hear me say, we want you, we need you to do these things. I'm calling you to action as a resident of an area of Berkeley that is dangerous and susceptible to wildfire. We need you to understand your neighborhood. Depending on where the fire starts and what direction it's going, we will be working with the divisions of the traffic division and PD. We will be working with parking enforcement. We'll be working with public works to figure out the best evacuation routes. If you live, let's say you live on Ajax, I can't tell you right now that getting out of Ajax, the right thing to do will be to turn left on Grizzly Peak and go out Centennial. I can't tell you the right thing will be to turn right and go down to Marin, because I don't know now where that fire is going to be. I need you to know your neighborhood. I need you to know how you can drive out of your neighborhood. I need you to know how you can walk out of your neighborhood. If you can't walk out of your neighborhood, I need you to know who you can contact to help you get out, okay? This is not me trying to instill fear. This is me trying to get you to understand what your role is in all of this. Because if you call 911 when a fire is burning through our city, it is a very low chance that somebody will get to you in a timely fashion if you are trapped. So how are we going to get you information? How do you know what's happening? We'll say it again, AC Alert. There are a number of ways we can reach you. If you sign up for AC Alert, you will get alerts. If you don't sign up, we can still reach you, but it might be a little harder. A lower level thing where we say, hey, it's a red flag day, pay attention. You won't get that if you haven't signed up. If there is a fire coming, we will get a hold of you. We have ways to reach you. The wireless emergency alert. So Amber Alerts, right? Or there was the presidential alert that went out a few months ago, right? Berkeley people hated that. Oh, Trump's going to call my cell phone. No, the president didn't do that. Emergency managers who work for the federal government called your cell phone. And we can do that too. But yeah, Moraga Rinda, you're like, you can't say that. So, yeah, exactly, right. I got counsel on my back here. So when we send a wireless emergency alert, that's not actually a local thing. We have to go through the county to do that. But we can make your phone shake and blow up and say, hey, there's a fire coming. But it might be a little bit delayed because we have to call the county and have them do that. That's just the way that works. And that's like that Amber Alert. You have a little control over that on your cell phone, but most people within range of a cell tower will get that alert. Well, what if I turn my phone off at night? What if I don't like to sleep with it on? I understand. To some degree, we need to find ways that we can wake you up, but you also need to take action to be able to be alerted. What the chief said about weather radios, we're looking into that now as making sure we can alert those radios, and we certainly encourage people to use those. He's right, it's like a siren system in your own house. We had a meeting today, actually. We're planning as a city on how to deal with this. So we had a big command staff training with the police and with CAL FIRE was there, we were there. And the police said, oh, we just bought this great mobile speaker that can penetrate houses for miles around. And we said, what? They said, yeah, you can mount it on a car or you can mount it on a person and walk around. And we're like, seriously? So like little things like that have just popped up, and we're gonna be exploring that because it will be a strong, loud sound coming into your house, and we'll be able to send messages that way. So everybody who wants a siren system, we might have just gotten one kind of backdoored into our city. So we're very excited to hear about that. But most importantly too, and really it's most importantly, websites, social media. What if power goes down? Talk to your neighbors. Talk to your neighbors. I wasn't kidding when I said introduce yourself to the person next to you, because when you walk outside your door and you knock on your neighbor's door or you go across the street, you're going to know them already, and they're going to trust you to do what needs to be done. A new concept that we're introducing. CAL FIRE has tried this for the last few years, and we're introducing it as well. Community Temporary Refuge Areas. We changed the name today because we realized we wanted to be in alignment with CAL FIRE in case they're helping run the fire. So Temporary Refuge Areas. What we've done is recognize, we looked at Paradise, and the majority of people injured and killed were people with mobility issues, over the age of 50, people with disabilities, things like that. So we recognize that it may be hard for everybody to get down and out in a fire, right? So what are some areas near the fire zones, in zones 2, that we may be able to direct you to those locations, and they may be defended a little easier, and it's a place that we can send larger transportation. So as we notify you about evacuation, if you're going out on foot, or if you need to drop people, or if we're dropping people and shuttling people off, if we manage to get major evacuation going, things like schools, some of the parks, some of the recreation facilities, even tennis courts at parks, we've identified as temporary refuge areas. Our incident commanders are going to know these places, and we'll be considering that as we tell you. But get to know them yourselves. If you've got larger buildings like schools, things like that in your neighborhood, we may be directing you there. Not for everybody, but for people who have trouble getting out all the way. So that's sort of the message about what to do in an evacuation. And we have tons more materials. We're going to do more trainings. This is sort of a quick overview. We have a website on the city website about evacuation, how to prepare, what more things you can put in your go kits. We have on our website information about alerting and where to get more information. But the final piece we want to talk about tonight is safe passages. So it's great to tell you guys you should go, but you can't go if the streets are blocked by cars parked. You can't go if the routes you're trying to go out are on fire because all the vegetation is overhanging it. So we're starting a program called Safe Passages. We're rolling out this new emergency evacuation plan, but it doesn't do any good if you can't get out. And you all saw the videos from Oakland and the 91 Hill Fire and Tunnel Road and in Berkeley on Alvarado, where cars were, literally tires were on fire, rolling down the streets. People had to get out of them. They blocked the streets. They walked on foot, and 25 people died trying to get out because of ingress and egress. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We could do all the work in the world to clear these streets, but unless we had 26-foot wide streets in straight lines heading down out of the hills, there will be problems. An evacuation will not be pretty. Moraga has done evacuation drills this year, and they've gone some well, others challenging. But that's the point of doing those exercises, educating the community, helping us learn where the problems are, and helping you learn how to get out. So we've been assessing the streets. Kin Chin, along with the Transportation Division, determined that there are between 10 feet and 26 foot wide streets. There are 41 miles in the city of Berkeley, which I wanted to immediately red zone and take away your parking and clear all the trees and brush from them. It's not the reaction I expected, but that would be thousands and thousands and thousands of parking spots, which would be okay from my perspective. We'll see about residents. So we looked at 20 feet wide. Also a significant impact, 10.6 miles in the hills. But this is a little more manageable. This is something that's especially hazardous, that narrow of a street. And that number of miles starts to become a little bit more digestible. You see 18.3 citywide, a little over 10 in the hill zones. So what we're doing is we're going location by location. We're trying to identify places where we're going to have a high density of people evacuating to an arterial to get out of the, at this point, fire zone 2. Again, panoramic, you guys are special. We're going to work on something for you. Because it is, panoramic zone 3 is a special problem. There's only one way in, maybe 2 ways out, and you can't just apply this kind of treatment to panoramic. So we're looking at existing, after the 91 fire, we actually did a number of streets. You can see we've got about 60 streets that we did this kind of treatment to. This is a list on our website. And actually Ruth Grimes, if you're here, is Ruth here? It's her husband. No, Ruth is a commissioner who did a lot of this work at the time. But we did some of that work. The signs are getting old, the red zones are getting old. We had a special assessment that helped fund all of that sunset in 1997, so we've lost a lot of that work. But we're looking at areas around curves through narrow streets where we're going to be adding red zones, but we're also going to be removing vegetation. So we're going to be trimming up the canopy. We're going to be trimming back that understory, that brush. And if it's on public property, that's easy to do. If it's on private property, it's actually pretty easy to do. But we're going to be working with property owners through inspections, and hopefully we're working on some grant funding. We're hoping to actually stand up a hand crew to come out and help do that kind of work so that these evacuation routes are both free of cars, but also free of vegetation that could cause flame impingement on people trying to escape. This is a good example. Just a few quick pictures here. This kind of brush along the side of the road on a narrow street, this kind of curve is what we need to get our engines in and out. So these are the kind of areas that we're going to be looking at for reducing parking, increasing enforcement, and doing vegetation management. Again, this is actually a well-maintained street. I actually really see how the trees are limbed up. There's ornamental vegetation, which is great. This is well kept, it's tended, it's watered, but still we could barely get an engine through there. So this is an area where we might say, okay, you know what, this well-maintained block, we can remove some of the parking on one side but keep the others. We're going to improve signage. We're going to make the signage consistent with the fire weather maps, or the matrix that we developed with the National Weather Service, so that it's clear to you, the community, is it a red flag day, is it an extreme fire day, and what do you need to do? If you have questions, feel free to email OES at cityofberkeley.info. That would probably go straight to Keith May's inbox, which is fine. He's happy to do that. And that wraps it up for our presentations. I think the council member is going to facilitate questions.
Okay, great. So thank you, Chief Brannigan. I'm so glad that you support the parking program, or the non-parking program, because I've been in discussions with the chief about this for a long time, and it's a kind of radical thing to do to people, remove their parking, but I think to not do it is actually negligent on our part. So I'm really glad to see this getting started. We're going to have questions now. We have gone through the cards. Yes? Yeah, and if you have additional questions now after Chief Brannigan's presentation, please raise the cards in the air and we'll come around and pick them up. Okay.
So I want to invite all our panelists back up to the stage. Dave, Eileen, Devin. come on up. We're going to ask you a whole bunch of questions. You can hand those to folks at the side. If you still have a question, why don't you raise your hand with your card, and someone will come by and get that for you. Okay. Hi. All right, I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question because it's for Tilden Park. So you're already here. Let's go. Folks, can you hear me? Are you able to hear? Okay, great. We're going to go ahead and start asking questions if folks can settle down. Thank you. All right, so here it is. What's the vegetation plan for Tilden? I think you gave us a lot of that. But the question is, can we build an effective fire break between Tilden and Berkeley? So let me see if this is long enough.
If not, I'm sure my voice is strong enough. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Louder. Nobody's ever asked me to be louder. So the question is, can we build an effective fire break? We're not looking to build fire breaks. This way? Okay. Sweet spot? Okay. We're looking to create fuel breaks. Fire break is kind of an old term. A fire break is interpreted in different ways by the public mostly, but a fuel break is what's really important. It's removing the fuel, specifically the ladder fuel. We want to try to interrupt that vertical and horizontal continuity, if that makes sense, so that the grass isn't burning into the herbaceous plants that are burning into the shrubs and into the tree canopy. That's effective. A lot of people are under the kind of conclusion that in an effort to stop fire, which you can't really stop fire. I mean, Coffee Park showed us that. Anything can burn, can and will burn under the right circumstances. But what we're really trying to do is make it so the fire is more manageable, and we do that by manipulating the fuels. And so that's what we're really looking to do when it comes to slowing down a fire. Like I said, we can't stop a fire from happening, but we can manage the velocity of a fire so that it's more manageable for us to put out. And with regards to Tilden Park, if you go on that website, it's www.ebparks.org, and you, in the search engine, you put in, or in the search box, you put in fuels management, it will actually pop up with all of the recommended treatment areas in Tilden Park specifically. There's at least 19 of them. I can't pull them up all off the top of my head, but, and they were all specifically and scientifically picked as an area that needed to be managed so that we could manipulate that fuel continuity that I was talking about. So with regards to a fuel break, that's what we're trying to do, but it's not going to be an area that's going to be void of vegetation completely. It's just going to be an area where the fuel ladder has been managed.
Thank you very much. Okay, this one is for Arinda Moraga Fire Chief Whitaker, who, by the way, grew up in Berkeley. He's a Berkeley High alum. Oops, sorry about that. Got it? Okay, good, that's cozy. What is the name of the consumer product that is a, quote, uninterrupted power supply, and where can we buy this product?
So certainly we wouldn't want to recommend a single retailer, but if you go on Amazon for about $100, it looks just like a power strip, and it's got a small lithium-ion battery. The key thing here, though, is that, and with batteries, you get what you pay for. The amp hours equal the dollars you spend. You don't need a Tesla Powerwall that will stand up your entire house. You just need something that will keep the router modem for your internet running and the base station for your cordless phone. The one in the Winokur home that's running tonight was about $100 on Amazon. It showed up the next day, and it's been amazing. So that said, any local retailer of your choice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Did you all get that? All right, so for the fire chief, our chief, Brannigan, could we organize a fire evacuation day especially for the Berkeley Hills. I thought you would like this question.
I would like this question. Thank you to whoever asked it. I am remiss in leaving it out of my presentation. We have 3 fire evacuation drills coming up in the city of Berkeley. So we've chosen 3 Sundays in August that we are going to conduct community evacuation drills in each of the 3 council districts in Zone 2. So one will be right around here, one will be a little more central, and then one will be in South Berkeley in the hills. So those dates, we have the dates. We don't have the scope of the exercise completely finished yet, or the locations finished yet. We're looking at possibly doing some of those safe passages treatments beforehand and running the evacuations through them, or picking sites that we're interested in doing, running the evacuation through them to demonstrate the need to do them. Yeah, more to come from that. We'll be working with the council members to get notification out, and also our regular information through our websites about when those will be, where they will be, and how you can participate.
Okay, so the next question I think might also be for you. How do you plan to balance the effort to add density to the R1 and R2 districts with the need to maintain fire safety in the hills?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because housing is, of course, an important need in Berkeley right now. So generally when you add density in those zoned areas, you're talking about an accessory dwelling unit, an ADU, which is a little bit of a third rail right now in politics in this town. The state has actually tied our hands a little bit on the ability to regulate those based on fire needs. So we have some ways that we can require off-street parking or work with the owner on adding an ADU, but we don't have a lot of local control over that from a fire code perspective, at least based on state regulations.
Okay, so here's another parks question. How will hikers or picnickers be notified of an immediate evacuation in case of fire in the parks? Are fire hazard signs put at all trailheads on red flag days?
Okay, there's a couple questions. I'm going to go a little bit bigger than that. So last year, we had a burn ban in place. Let me start a little differently here. The Park District has a fire danger weather rating plan. It was signed off on by CAL FIRE. We worked with them in conjunction. We have 5 RAWS stations across the Park District that help inform not just the Park District Fire Department, but also CAL FIRE and some of our local other fire departments, our local response areas. And so every day the weather is read out over our dispatch, because we have our own police and fire department, we have our own communication center, our own dispatch center, twice a day, at 10 o'clock in the morning and at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The 4 o'clock in the afternoon goes out across our Channel 3, which everybody who's not at the main office in the Park District or an administrator of some sort hears over the radio. So a ranger that is hiking a trail, maybe picking up litter, carrying a radio, going to hear the weather broadcast. During that weather broadcast, a couple of things are said. It talks about the staffing of Fire Station 1 and what our response capabilities are for that day. It talks about what the fire rating, the fire danger rating weather is that day, and it talks about what the weather is going to be like the next day. So all of our field staff are very well informed on what's going on. That being said, if it's a red flag warning day, that is also put out over the air 2 times a day. We also, that same fire danger plan has got 2 different levels. It's got a level 1 and a level 2. This is all on our website, and it's very explanatory on the website. And based on what level it is, it tells our park operating staff and our fire staff exactly what the restrictions are for that area. Last year, we had over 50 days where we were in a burn ban. We actually matched, it was my decision to match the restrictions internal to the Park District along with CAL FIRE's restrictions. That meant we had a lot of very upset people coming to our Park District who wanted to start barbecues, up the barbecues that we provide, and they weren't allowed to do so. I said there was no carbon fires of any kind, so they could bring in a propane barbecue if they wanted to, but other than that, no coal, no carbon emitting thing. And the idea behind that is that if it's a gas fire, a little propane barbecue, they can shut it off. It doesn't cast embers, thus restricting the possibilities. So I think I'm maybe missing part of the question, but the Park District has its own plan in place for our fire weather. It's updated every day on our website. And if you look at the level that it's on, and there will be a level that we're operating on every day, the minute fire season starts, that will give you the specific restrictions for that park. That being said, if you're a hiker and you're not aware of what it is, if you didn't see the sign going in, because all of our parks at the entrance, with the exception of a few of the maybe satellite gates, I'm thinking of Moon Gate up here, some of those may not have a sign that says what the fire danger rating is for that particular day, but if you ask park staff and if you look on the website, it'll definitely tell you. And then all the major entries to the parks. Tilden's got 2 or 3. Del Val, all the way out in our southeast section, has got a great big sign that you saw in Chief Brannigan's, where it's got the very universal colors associated with the extremeness of the fire and an arrow that points to it. And so that's how our plan works.
Okay. Thank you. So the next question is it's just a softball question to Chief Brannigan. That's a joke. If you had a dream fuel management program, how much would it cost annually, and what would you do?
The bottomless wallet question. Well, honestly, to be quite blunt, I would spend a lot of money on these guys' districts and UC because fuel management is so much about that. But for City of Berkeley proper and property, I think what we're talking about, you saw a few pictures, before and after pictures of treatment areas, and really a healthy California forest. I mean, we don't have too many natural forests around here, but if you're gonna have trees, you should be able to see from tree to tree. You should be able to see gaps, every 15 to 20 feet. There isn't really a healthy understory in California. If we had redwood trees and oak trees with some healthy, ground level growth, but not a lot of brush in between, I would make all of our city parks look like that. I would have everybody's yards look like that. And the other thing we would do is we would put a lot of money into structure hardening in zones 2 and 3. So your homes are one of the biggest threats we have, right? Those beautiful Berkeley wood shingle houses. We still have houses in the hills, believe it or not, with wood shake roofs. Even though we have code that says you have to update that, you haven't always hit the threshold to trigger the updates to those. So we would, in a perfect world, spend a lot of money helping people harden their homes proactively, not just waiting for renovations to happen.
Do you have anything else to add on? An ideal fuel management program?
I support everything he said about mitigating our fuels.
We give them lots of money, too.
Great. Well, you did touch on something that is enveloped in the second question, and this question is as follows. What can be done about negligent neighbors who refuse to cut down their hazardous trees or shrubbery?
I was going to make a crack about Tilden Park being our neighbor, but you guys do a great. Actually, no. To their credit, they actually are great partners and have really engaged with us on where the fuel breaks or fuel shaded. Thank you. Need to be. So, in terms of your neighbors, our first suggestion is talk to your neighbor. We get so many complaints to our Fire Prevention Bureau where people haven't spoken to the neighbor, and it could be a misunderstanding. Now, we also get a lot of complaints that are because neighbors aren't getting along, and they may or may not have significant problems. So you can call 311, which is the City of Berkeley's information line. They will route you to the appropriate department, whether it's a fire issue or another type of issue. If it's a fire issue specifically around the wildland-urban interface and fuel mitigation, we'll send an inspector or a fire engine out to check out your property. We do annual inspections, but only in a limited number of properties. We basically inspect from Grizzly Peak to Tilden Park proactively, and then everything else is complaint-based. So give us a call. we'll come check it out and let your neighbors know if there's something that really does need to be done now. When the neighbor's the city, we want to know that too. In fact, we just sent out, did anybody receive a packet from me this week? Okay, a couple hands, yeah. That packet was a result of a lot of work from OES and fire prevention. We actually got one of those returned to us today from the Human Resources Department because we sent it to the city of Berkeley, 2180 Milvia, and somebody delivered it to HR. So they didn't care about that property. But we need to know that because we need our records updated and we need to get Parks or Public Works on it to clear our own space. You got a packet too? Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so we're going to have the questions. So we're going to have. So we have questions here. I don't know who's asking the question, but we have questions lined up here. So if we have any remaining questions, we'll just ask that you write them down, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. So that the next question that we have is, how does the recent rains impact fire risk?
You want to go first? You want me to go first?
So the challenge with the rains is that specifically with the reduction of annual grasses, we try to time our mitigation measures to catch the end of the growing season but precede the onset of fire season, and that's a very limited window, and obviously that's a moving target every year. So last year, as an example, in the fire district, all fuels mitigation had to be done by June 15th, and that was a little late last year. This year, June 15th is going to be too early because this latest round of rain, depending on what exposure slope you're on, what type of vegetation, and how much water pools, one of three things is going to happen. Either the seeds that have been broadcast by the mature cured grasses are going to resprout and there's going to be another growth, or the stuff that is still growing will get a second wind and will grow some more, or nothing will happen, depending on what parcel it's on. So the answer to that question is it complicates a very dynamic environmental problem to which there is no cookie cutter answer, and the answer is going to depend parcel by parcel, aspect by aspect, vegetation model by vegetation model. And the takeaway is that all annual grasses have got to be cut to less than 3 inches by the time the growing season is done, whenever that may be. All lower tree limbs need to be trimmed and limbed 6 to 8 feet from the ground so you can walk a circle at the drip line with your hand above your head and not hit anything. And all brush needs to either be broken up or removed so it doesn't form continuous things, and anything near a home that will burn needs to be removed, whether it rained or not.
There's one way it's affected it. So we have a ton of work going on right now in Tilden, in Anthony Chabot, and in Wildcat Canyon, and some of our work was quite large trees being removed in Wildcat Canyon, and we had masticators and some of the pieces of equipment that I showed you up there. We had to suspend that, right, because it's unsafe for them to work in that conditions, not to mention the fact that it's going to cause further erosive issues. So we suspended that. Didn't mean the work stopped. It just meant we couldn't use our normal tools, and we had to back off and use just hand crews and do a bunch of hand work. So as soon as the soil becomes a little bit more stable, we end up doing less damage. We'll get back to using some of the larger pieces of equipment that we do. But that's another way that it can affect it.
Okay. We have to hurry up a little bit because we have to be out of here pretty soon, but we still have a lot more questions to ask. So, does the city have a funding source to assist with utility undergrounding? I'll take that question. No, the city does not have a funding source for utility undergrounding. PG&E, years ago, did subsidize utility undergrounding, but they stopped that program. And of course now, who knows? The CPUC, which is in charge of utility undergrounding in the state, is looking at reevaluating the 20A program. That was the program that most of the neighborhoods who are already undergrounded used. There's also a program called 20B, which is financed by the neighborhoods themselves. And the people over there, Terry and Nancy Rader, are the people to talk to about developing a 20B, okay, because that's what they're working on right now. So that's the short of it. If you want more information, you can call me at my office, and I can direct you to all kinds of information about utility undergrounding. I know that there's also a question for the parks, for East Bay Regional Parks, about whether or not you have any plans to underground your lines in the parks.
That's not a current plan now, no. I know that there has been a movement to, as some of the developments around us grow up to the park boundaries, the park district's trying to get a foot in the door to talk to some of the utility agencies so that we can at least have a seat at the table with regards to where those go and how they're placed. Because sometimes if you can't underground them, at least if you put them in a different location, strategically for the fire department, it's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Okay, how do we get park on one side of the street signs in our neighborhood?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Park on one side of the street. Well, we have no parking as a thing. So actually, the way this all got started, we had an idea to, instead of red zoning and taking away parking, designate where you could drive. So like create a lane that is drivable, and if you can fit your car off of that, that's fine. When we actually sat down with Transportation Division of Public Works and with Parking Enforcement, they're like, that's nobody's going to know what that means. We can't enforce it. We don't get too creative here, buddy, is basically what they told me. So, so we're sticking with traditional treatments on corridors here, where we're going to be red zoning. Hopefully, there's not always a curb in these neighborhoods, so where we can, we'll paint a red curb. We'll put no parking signs. We'll trim back vegetation. We'll make it pretty clear. And it's not necessarily about one side or the other. Like if we go around a curve, we need the outside of the curve and probably the inside of the curve to be no parking. As we come through different treatments, we'll be looking at things as granular as, well, there are 8 driveways on this side of the street and only 2 on this side of the street. So if we take away parking on the side with the driveways, that'll leave us more parking spots than if we took it away on the other side, because you can't park across the driveway technically. So we really are trying to be thoughtful about that too. We're not just going to come in and do the nuclear option on your parking on your streets.
Okay, this is a question I think for all of you. PG&E will shut down power, jeopardizing East Bay Mud's ability to pump water from reservoirs. Any backup plans?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think any of us really want to speak for PG&E or East Bay Mud in this case. I will say 2 years ago when PG&E started talking about this plan, one of the first pieces of feedback we gave them when they came to our agency specifically was in 1991, we lost power to the reservoirs and therefore water supply and therefore lives and property in Oakland and Berkeley. So they heard that loud and clear. They went and talked to the utilities. PG&E is a big animal, and they have a lot of partners they have to work with and worry about. So I know East Bay Mud is looking at backup generator power. PG&E, my understanding is that they're trying to be thoughtful about what the impacts would be and give plenty of notice. But to be more specific than that, I think would be premature, and quite frankly, I don't have all the details of what their plans are. Have you heard anything differently from them?
So this is one of the areas where even though we're a park district fire department and we're a little weird compared to other fire departments, we have the advantage. We don't depend necessarily on municipal water sources. We certainly use them where we can, but the park district has our own internal wharf hydrant system. Now, in saying that, don't get too excited because they're very, very, very limited. We do have water tanks throughout the park district that support a finite amount of water. We do have our reservoirs and our stock ponds that we pull from, and we have specialized tools that are ancient, frankly, called water ejectors that we can hook up to a hose. We can put a portion of it into a stock pond, and we can put out a fire. Those are the kind of fires that are primarily going to happen on park district land. So we're not going to be real useful, with the exception of our helicopter, when we're trying to help one of these guys put out a fire in a municipal area, in a neighborhood. We do have 2 helicopters. They both have Bambi buckets. In fact, we were hired by CAL FIRE for a month this past this past season because there was no other overhead resource as far as a helicopter go that could drop water in Region 2, which is what we're in right here. It's CAL FIRE's designated Region 2. So we do have the helicopter that can help out with that, and we do have some equipment that we carry on our engines that would help in a situation where we had no hydrant use. But that's limited.
Actually, now, seeing where that question was going, I think Dr. Scawthorne maybe asked that one. We do in Berkeley have an above-ground water system. So it was originally envisioned for earthquakes and fires following earthquakes, but we could use it. We have two truck-sized pumps that can pump 6,000 gallons of water out of the bay up to 3 to 6 miles from the bay, so about to the foot of the campus. So we could set up some kind of shuttle if we had to of water if we lost East Bay mud water, if we had to.
Thank you. So one more. Here's a question that I can answer. Can we get access slides from the presentation? And so I will ask the presenters, is it okay with you if we, okay, so the answer is yes. And I think each of the council members who are here can post the presentations on our website so that you will all be able to access that once we get them up. So that's these two. So I just want to take the temperature of the crowd. As Chief Brannigan said, we only inspect properties from Grizzly Peak east to the Tilden border. After the 91 fire, we had a special assessment of properties in the high hazard fire area, $50 a parcel a year. And that was for a robust inspection program. Right now, the city only has one fire inspector. And what I want to know, just with a show of hands, is if we reintroduced a fire assessment of $50 a year, would you support it? Okay, that's pretty good result. Thank you. I'm thinking about that because we only had the program for 5 years. We started it in 1992, and it was sunsetted in 1997. And so we have not really had a robust inspection program since then. And I think that's something that we need to think about. So, okay, thank you. Okay, my trusted assistant is telling me it's time to end. So I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank the panel so much. Please take some time and pick up literature, sign up for AC Alert, and if you are physically able, please pick up your chair, fold your chair up, and take it to the side of the room. Thank you.